Okay, hailing from the 7th Ward in the city of Albany, it's Sergio Adams. What really got my attention here is the fact that you made what could be a career-ending admission that you listened to Talk 1300, which I found to be shocking and quite brave. But how would you describe yourself? Are you a political advocate? Are you an activist, community member?
I wear many different hats depending on the situation of, what's needed.
Okay.
Sometimes you need to be the activist that's out on the front lines. Sometimes you need to be the person behind the scene, and it is interchangeable.
I've seen you at a lot of Sue Rizzo's pressers last year when she was running for county controller. Yeah. So that is a specific hat, but what does the city of Albany need if your hat depends on what's necessary at the time when we have 117 people shot and we have shots fired that honestly aren't making the news because it's insignificant compared to the number of shootings? What does the city of Albany need right now?
That's a good question. Good question.
Mm-hmm.
In this type of situation, in these times, it's clear leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we hear that literally all the time. We need leadership. We need leadership. But it's the proactive leadership, in my eyes, that we are missing. In terms of, there's tons of people right now who are upset, who are scared, who are now, some of them being kind of like, oh, I'm getting used to this. Oh, it's another shooting. And that's not the culture that we want to create or have in the city of Albany. And so when it comes to the leadership, we need young people. We need people who are from these communities that actually have a rapport and relationship with these people already.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not outside people dictating what's going on in these neighborhoods or putting their 2 cents in when the community is looking at them as, you don't know anything that's going on here.
Is it outside people right now?
It depends on, yes.
Do you want to pull that a little closer?
Sure.
Yep.
To answer your question, in some regards, yes. Because you do have a lot of people who work for the city, who are in political positions that do not live in these direct neighborhoods. Besides your council person who does live in their wards, not too many of the other people who are weighing in necessarily have an invested interest in that community besides their position.
So it seems like administrative, sort of like how a company will hire an HR manager. You might not necessarily have any stake in what happens to Target, but you went to school for this, and because it's HR, it's kind of copy and paste.
Exactly.
Do you feel it's a copy and paste approach right now?
Yes.
So
totally.
Not to overuse the word systemic, that would suggest that there is a systemic problem and a pattern of behavior over time.
Sure. And
patterns of behavior take time to correct. So what would really need to be done in your perspective or opinion to adjust those behavioral patterns?
Wow. I mean, that's a deeper question because again, you talk about this on the show or make mention to it. It's that, the way I look at it, it's a lot of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of cultural influences that are, for better lack of words, brainwashing or really changing the mindsets of young people in these communities. And so when now you have some of these systemic issues and institutions in place, we clearly know some of the obvious day-to-day issues of lack of employment,
so it's overlapping a lot of factors.
All of these things are in a big pot being shaken up right now, and it's going to be very hard. I'm not going to be the first person to say there's a direct solution to it, because there's many aspects to cover, which makes it hard. I think when it comes to addressing it, we have to have people at different levels working on these different things to spread resources across. So it's not like we're just focusing on legislation, but we're also hearing what the people in the community are saying in terms of some of the social programs and things that can be implemented or done to help them. That needs to be done and be worked on. The legislation part, people who are in that area needs to be working on that. There needs to be
An overhaul?
Overhaul. It needs to be a approach that is coming from a circular motion. Everyone that's around it should be closing in on these issues and focusing on it. There's no need to just take our mind off one and focus on the other when we know a lot of these things are directly connected.
How long have you lived in the city of Albany?
10 years.
Okay.
Prior before that, I lived in Troy, so...
so you're
still in the area.
Still from the area, familiar.
Yeah.
Everyone knows the Times Union Center, obviously,
Exactly.
or the Pepsi, depending on what era you grew up in, or the Knickerbocker. But having understood over time how things have changed, I suppose, in the city of Albany and honestly in the capital region as a whole, do you feel like we are on a trajectory that will lead to a good or bad place at this rate another 10 years from now?
I have mixed feelings on that question. Okay. Because living here, growing up as a teenager, living in Troy, coming into Albany, seeing what Albany looked like back in, 2008, seeing what Troy looked like back in 2007, 2009, 2010, and seeing where we came from in terms of development and creating a more pleasant looking city. Both downtowns changed. There's a lot of new buildings, a lot of new shops, restaurants, businesses, all that came within, these last few years. So it's great and amazing to see that. Some of the other issues that we're seeing now that are going on in terms of like the racial equity, in terms of now the COVID, the increased gun violence, this is something that if we're currently looking at it right now and we're estimating and looking down the line, it doesn't look good.
Okay. But here, I'm of two minds on this.
Sure.
To a certain level as well. Because this year, things are particularly bad. But last year, you could have made the opposite argument concerning violence because the trends were downward. Because I think we only had one homicide last year, and the shots fired are exponentially higher this year. So they do the rolling 5-day average with the COVID numbers.
Sure.
If we eliminate this year, the rolling average could have been trending in a positive direction, but all of these conflating factors have sort of derailed that. So as a member of the community, not someone who's politically connected, but as a member of the community, has your quality of life increased or decreased in the past 10 years that you've lived here? Just as the average layman.
So one thing. So back to that other question real quick.
Yeah, fine.
So for me, it's like, yes, we could have looked at that of, last year being not so bad. But for me personally, I noticed something coming from when you have a person or people, whoever it was, that shot up the up on Cloven, the Democratic headquarters place. When you can do that and the trend still kind of goes on with some shootings here and there, I knew eventually like something was going to build up. But now to your question, if my current quality of life has improved, it fluctuates. It fluctuates because I've had the opportunity, I'm lucky enough to be aware of the resources here in Albany and some of the things that are going on. So for me, over the last couple of years, I've been able to take advantage of certain city programs and getting scholarships and things to go back to school, to do certain things to advance myself. That has put me in better positions. But at the same time, there's other, community issues that has held back not only me, but, people in the area as well. I lost a lot of friends that decided to move out of Albany after being here after college and stuff like that, they didn't see the purpose of being in Albany anymore. They didn't see the benefits. In terms of like the housing situation, I've gone through a lot of housing issues in terms of dealing with landlords, raising the rent. When I first moved in my apartment in my ward, I was paying $875. Now it's up to almost $1,300. And my salary hasn't increased that much for the rent to jump like that. So I've seen it happen to me. I know it happens to other people. I've witnessed it. And so depending on who you're talking to, it fluctuates. And on a aesthetically level of how the city is looking now, I think we are moving in a better direction, because now we're finally starting to try to correct and fix and some of the issues that just been clear as day. You're talking about the rezoning, the access to the waterfront. You're talking about the employment situation. These are things that now the focus is being put on. We just need to continue that.
What is the biggest priority in your opinion? What should be the biggest priority in the city of Albany moving forward, or what are the things that you care about most?
Right now, it's this gun violence. The second thing for me is the housing and the recent developments that have been happening in the city of Albany. There's been a lot of commentary between nonprofit organizations, local groups, groups online, Facebook groups, that this issue of the development that's going on is a huge topic of discussion for them. It goes down all the way to, these developers getting the tax breaks, the tax cuts, and people not wanting to see any more student housing being built and destroying the fabric of these neighborhoods. So right now, those are like the most important things to me that I think we need to address. And even within that whole housing part is still the rezoning. I believe that there's a lot of things that came out afterwards that we are noticing that needs to be improved. A lot more open, and we need to do a better job of educating people in the city of Albany of zoning, what it entails, how it impacts them, as well as getting them involved into the process so they can understand what's happening to their communities.
One of the things that makes it difficult to advocate for or against any of what you just said is that when it comes to development, you don't instantaneously see the effect of it. For example, something instant would be knocking down the central warehouse, and now you no longer have this giant eyesore in Albany.
Yeah.
That's the immediate gratification that humans tend to gravitate toward.
Absolutely.
But when you talk about building student housing and, quote, destroying the rural or the character of a neighborhood generally, yes, that's not something you see automatically, and it's also not something you'd see all the time because students aren't always here. Mm-hmm. So do you find it to be challenging to argue for or against these things when the evidence you have is sort of anecdotal at best?
Yes, I do. I agree with that statement. However, for me personally, I went to school for planning, worked in planning, and a lot of the plans that the city of Albany is carrying out, I've worked on some of these plans and studied some of these plans from way back in school. The Albany 2030 Comprehensive Plan has been out for over 10 years now, and this is directly showing people the direction that Albany wants to move into. And so as I'm looking at the 2030 plan and seeing the changes that are currently happening, it's clear to me of what the city's focus is on. And so now, for me, it's trying to educate and tell people about what's happening. So again, they can try to organize things in their communities. People can actually have an opinion on some of these things, and they're just not left in the dark.
All right. And as I'm coasting to a stop here, what are your closing thoughts about the state of affairs in general, if you were to summarize them? What is the most important thing or two or five for people to know either about you or about your thoughts on the city?
For me, I stayed in the city of Albany because I seen the potential in Albany, even when it was very hard to see. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people understand and know that feeling and sentiment of why they stay in Albany. And for me, everything that I'm working on currently is to actually try to improve and give back to the neighborhoods in Albany, and to, again, educate and inform people of what's going on. Regardless how you feel about the situation, I'm just trying to educate and inform people to make the best decisions for themselves and for their communities. And so, over the last couple of weeks, we just did a voter registration. We targeted areas that were high in crime, that needed the assistance. We gave free backpacks, PPE supplies. We did a whole bunch of stuff for these communities, and we target these specific communities because of the need. I want people to notice and see that regardless of what's going on in the community, whether it's bad, good, that there are people who are still caring and still realizing the need and trying to provide that need. So I'm working with a lot of different people right now, different organizations, to deal with a lot of different issues. Again, multiple hats, interchangeable, but the people that we're working with are committed, and they love Albany. And that's what I love about Albany as well, is when you find a group of people who are interested in the same things that you are, it's not that hard to organize and get things done here.
All right, Mr. Adams, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can't wait to hear the show.
All right. It's going to be a good time.